Chosen one, this message didn't find you by accident. God led you here for a reason. You didn't stumble upon this word. Heaven arranged it. Why? Because the spiritual realm has taken notice of your obedience, your endurance, and your heart. You've been walking through a season that felt overlooked, misunderstood, and heavy. But heaven has been watching every step. And right now, whether you feel it or not, heaven is smiling over you. There is something you've done, maybe in secret, maybe in silence, that has moved the heart of God. You may not have the applause of people. You may not even have the support of those closest to you, but heaven is clapping. Angels are rejoicing. The Father is proud. Let's break this down in 7 powerful chapters so you understand why this moment in your life is so important and why heaven is proud of you right now. Before we dive deep, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, because this message isn't just content, it's confirmation straight from the throne room of heaven. If your spirit resonates with this frequency, type 77 in the comments right now. That number isn't just a number, it's a heavenly code, a sacred sign that you are in divine alignment, spiritually awake, and ready to receive what your obedience has unlocked. This message won't reach everyone, but it was always meant to reach you. Those who stay until the end won't just hear words, they'll witness a revelation. Your clarity will deepen, your awareness will sharpen, and hidden confirmations will rise from within your spirit. This isn't something you listen to once and forget. This is a living word, an unfolding blueprint. Rewatch it every time your soul needs reminding. Heaven sees you, honors you, and is about to reward you publicly for what you endured privately. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. You chose obedience over opportunity. Chosen one. In a world obsessed with speed, fame, and validation, you chose obedience. While others were chasing positions and platforms, you were on your knees, chasing presence. While they were asking, "How can I be seen?" you were asking, "God, how can I serve?" You could have compromised to get ahead. You could have settled just to feel safe, but you didn't. You turned away from what looked right, because your spirit knew it wasn't righteous. You said yes to God, even when it meant walking away from the crowd, even when it looked like you were losing. You said yes in the quiet, in the lonely, in the wilderness. Not because it made sense, but because you made a decision. God, I'll trust you over everything else. You passed on relationships that looked promising because your spirit wasn't at peace. You passed on jobs that paid well, but drained your purpose. You walked away from circles that fed your ego, but starved your soul. You stayed behind when others were rushing ahead, because you refused to move without God's instruction. That's rare, that's holy, and that's exactly why heaven is proud of you. Anyone can follow when the path is clear, but you followed when it was cloudy. Anyone can trust when the blessing is visible, but you trusted when all you had was a whisper. You obeyed in the dark. You obeyed in the drought. You obeyed through heartbreak, through rejection, through delay, and you never lost your reverence. You weren't just being tested, you were being refined. And while people were watching for your fall, heaven was watching for your faith. You didn't just choose God once, you chose Him again and again, even when it would have been easier to walk away. And every time you did, you rewrote the story of your bloodline. That yes you gave in private, it shifted things in the spirit. That no you gave to temptation, it broke curses generations deep. Your obedience built a foundation that your children's children will stand on. And even when you didn't see immediate results, You trusted that your sacrifice would not return void. You proved to heaven that you weren't after just a breakthrough. You were after God's heart, and God saw it. The angels saw it. Your ancestors saw it. You didn't have to post it or prove it. Your life became the proof. Chosen one, this is why heaven is proud of you. Because you obeyed when you could have compromised. You surrendered when you could have strived. You trusted when you could have turned back. And now the reward is on its way, not just because you were faithful, but because your faithfulness was rooted in love. Heaven is not just watching, it's preparing. Because when obedience leads, overflow follows, and you're about to step into the kind of favor that only obedience can unlock. Chapter 2. You stayed pure in a polluted world, chosen one, in a generation where corruption is celebrated and compromise is rewarded. You chose purity, not just in your actions, but in your heart, your thoughts, your motives, and your intentions. While others polluted their spirits for clout, convenience, or comfort, you guarded your soul like a sacred temple. You knew the value of your vessel, and you refused to let the stains of this world define your spirit. You've been wronged, misunderstood, betrayed, and rejected, sometimes by the very people you tried to help. But you didn't let their darkness dim your light. You didn't let their hatred harden your heart. Instead of seeking revenge, you sought refuge in prayer. Instead of gossiping, you went silent. Instead of lashing out, you leaned in, into God's presence, into His word, into His healing. You didn't just survive the attacks, you stayed clean through them. And that matters, because purity isn't weakness, it's spiritual strength. It takes real maturity to not become what hurt you. It takes courage to walk in forgiveness when bitterness feels justified, and you did it, over and over again. Heaven is proud of you because purity attracts presence. Divine favor falls on a surrendered heart. Gifts may get attention, but purity gets God's trust. That's why some people are talented but spiritually stuck, because purity is the price of true elevation. You could have cursed them, you could have exposed them, you could have fought fire with fire, but instead, you kept your fire on the altar. Every time you chose peace over pettiness, you became more powerful in the spirit. Every time you cried out to God, instead of responding with venom, your oil increased. You didn't let trauma twist your character. You didn't let pain poison your perspective. You stood in the storm and stayed pure. And here's the truth: purity is protection. It keeps you covered in a world full of counterfeit connections and spiritual traps. Your clean heart has been your shield. Your surrendered spirit has been your safeguard. You're not perfect, but your purity is proof that you belong to God, not just in words, but in lifestyle. Others may not have seen the internal battles you fought. They may not understand why you walk the way you do, careful, consecrated, and set apart. But heaven saw it all. And heaven rewards what man ignores. That quiet decision to forgive, that moment you bit your tongue and prayed instead, that time you walked away from temptation when no one was watching. That's what set you apart. Chosen one, you didn't just resist sin. You resisted becoming bitter. And that's why you're about to be blessed in a way that makes no sense to the world. Because while others were chasing greatness through grit, you cultivated greatness through purity. You emptied yourself so God could fill you. And now, the overflow is coming, not just to your hands, but to your house, your lineage, your legacy. Heaven is proud of you because you stayed clean in a dirty world. You stayed pure when pollution was popular. And because of that, God is about to release something holy through your life that no one can replicate or steal. Chapter 3. You didn't bow when it would have been easier. There were moments, chosen one, when the pressure was almost unbearable. Moments when compromise seemed like the only way forward. When blending in would have been easier than standing out. When keeping quiet would have cost you less than speaking truth. You were presented with doors that looked like opportunities, but you discerned that they were traps in disguise. And instead of bowing to them, you stood your ground. You could have played the game. You could have adjusted your values to fit the culture. You could have gone with the flow to gain favor, money, influence, or acceptance. But you didn't. You refused to kneel to systems, people, and platforms that required you to shrink your truth or silence your spirit. You didn't chase applause. You pursued alignment. You didn't care about being relevant. You wanted to be righteous, and heaven noticed. Like the 3 Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you stood when others bowed. And just like them, your stand didn't make life easier. It made it hotter. The fire got turned up. The pressure increased. The attacks intensified. People questioned your choices. Some even walked away from you because you wouldn't bend. But even in the flames, you didn't flinch. And that's why heaven is so proud of you. Because true strength isn't measured by how loud you shout. It's revealed in how long you can stand without wavering. You stood in the face of rejection, delay, and mockery. You stood when you were tired, when you were misunderstood, when it felt like no one saw your sacrifice. But God saw it. The angels saw it. The heavens recorded it. Your silent stand echoed louder than any sermon. Your refusal to compromise became your covenant. There were things that came to tempt you. Success without surrender, recognition without righteousness, shortcuts that looked like blessings but weren't sent by God. And you turned them all down. Why? Because your loyalty isn't for sale. You weren't just trying to make it. You were trying to make it God's way. And let this be known. When you don't bow, you activate backup. Just like the 4th man in the fire, God stepped into your situation. Your obedience became your shield. Your purity became your covering. You may have lost people, positions, or promotions, but you gained heaven's favor. And that's worth more than anything this world could offer. You didn't just stand for yourself. You stood for generations. You broke generational habits of bowing to fear, control, manipulation, and validation. You taught your spirit how to say no to what's easy and yes to what's eternal. That's a legacy move. That's a kingdom stand. That's spiritual maturity. And while others may never understand what it cost you to stand, heaven already counted every tear, every lonely night, every missed opportunity, every door you turned down, every time you stayed quiet when you could have fought back. And heaven is proud. Chosen one, your life is evidence that it's possible to stay loyal in a world of compromise. And now, because you didn't bow when it would have been easier, God is about to elevate you where no compromise is required. You're going to be blessed, not just for what you did, but for what you refused to do. And the favor that's coming won't require a mask, a performance, or a bow. It will be real. It will be pure. It will be divine. Chapter 4. You loved when it didn't make sense. Chosen one, this chapter is one of the most powerful reasons heaven is proud of you. Because you did the one thing most hearts refuse to do in this era. You chose to love, even when it didn't make sense. You loved when it wasn't fair. You loved when it hurt. You loved when it made no logical sense to continue loving. And that more than anything, reveals the Spirit of God within you. You've been wounded deeply. You've experienced betrayal, abandonment, and dishonor from the very ones you prayed for, supported, and protected. People you would have gone to war for walked away without explanation. People you covered in prayer tried to expose you. People you were loyal to used you like you were disposable. And still, you chose love. You didn't respond with revenge. You didn't allow bitterness to set in. You didn't start matching energy. You chose to match Christ. You extended mercy. You forgave in secret. You prayed for people who never apologized. You carried their names into your quiet time with God, asking Him to bless them, heal them, and give them peace, even when they tried to rob you of yours. That kind of love doesn't come from this world. It comes from another realm, from the throne of grace itself. That kind of love is proof that you've been transformed by the Spirit, because only someone who has encountered divine love can give love like that. You see, love isn't just emotion, it's warfare. And when you loved instead of lashing out, you were engaging in a higher spiritual strategy. You broke cycles of retaliation. You interrupted generational curses. You overcame evil with good. You turned your heart into a battlefield where grace won. That's why heaven is celebrating you. You didn't just love the easy ones, you loved the difficult ones, the ones who tested your boundaries, the ones who poked at your past, the ones who never gave you closure. You loved through confusion. You loved through silence. You loved through tears. And God saw it all. Every time you kept your heart open after it was shattered, you passed another test. Every time you treated someone better than they treated you, you were building eternal rewards. Every time you withheld your wrath and poured out compassion instead, you were operating in the divine. That's not weakness, that's kingdom. Chosen one, you didn't just love with your emotions, you loved with your obedience. You did what Jesus commanded, not what your flesh wanted. You offered second chances without being asked. You restored people in your heart long before they returned. And you did it not because they were worthy, but because you refused to let hate harden your spirit. God is proud of you, because in a time where love is rare, you are proof that it still exists. In a world that rewards cold hearts and toxic boundaries, you dared to be warm. You dared to be compassionate. You dared to be like Christ. That doesn't go unnoticed in the kingdom. In fact, that kind of love shifts atmospheres. It opens doors. It causes angels to respond. Love is the language of heaven, and you speak it fluently. That's why miracles are chasing you. That's why breakthrough is near. That's why heaven is proud. Because while others are calculating revenge, you're counting blessings. While others are keeping score, you're keeping your soul clean. And because of that, God is about to give you a love that doesn't make sense either. A divine love, a holy connection, a reward for your heart posture. Chapter 5. You kept moving, even when you were broken. Chosen one, this is one of the most sacred reasons heaven is so proud of you right now. You didn't wait to be healed before you kept going. You didn't wait to be understood before you stepped forward. You didn't need applause, validation, or strength from the outside, because you found something deeper on the inside. You kept moving while broken. There were nights you cried yourself to sleep and woke up still praying. There were mornings your soul felt heavy, but you still showed up for others. You poured into people when no one was pouring into you. You encouraged others while secretly asking God to hold you together. You were silently breaking, but you refused to quit. And that is what separates you. You didn't perform strength, you embodied it. You didn't deny your pain. You carried it to God and trusted Him with it. You limped forward when you could have laid down. You took steps, even if they were shaky. You kept your hand on the plow while tears ran down your face. That is divine courage. There were moments the enemy thought he had you, when grief almost stole your focus, when anxiety almost suffocated your faith, when disappointment almost convinced you that nothing would ever change. But you didn't give up. You whispered prayers when no one was around. You listened for God's voice in the silence. And even when you didn't feel Him, you kept moving like He was there. Heaven watched every one of those moments, every silent battle you fought, every secret breakdown you had, every night you chose not to numb your pain, but to face it with faith. Every time you got out of bed and said, "God, I don't know how, but I trust you." Every time you refused to run away and instead pressed into the presence of the Lord. Those moments were sacred, and they were noticed. You weren't just walking through pain, you were worshiping through it. Every step forward was an act of faith. Every yes to God was a sacrifice. Every time you lifted your head, when you wanted to hide, was a sign that the Spirit of God was alive in you. That's what makes you chosen. You kept moving when others would have given up. You kept sowing when nothing was growing. You kept believing when everything was breaking. And even when your hands were trembling, you never let go of the promise. That level of endurance isn't natural, it's supernatural. And now, because of that perseverance, heaven is responding. The angels that watched you suffer are now being dispatched to help you soar. The same God who allowed the test is now preparing your testimony. Because you didn't stop, you're about to step into divine momentum. This is your recovery season, not just from what hurt you, but from what almost buried you. Because the truth is, chosen one, you didn't just survive, you remained faithful. You didn't just endure, you kept your heart open. You didn't just move, you moved with grace. And now, what was once your valley will become your victory. What was once your breaking point will be your breakthrough. And everyone who thought it was over for you will witness what God does with someone who kept walking through the fire without losing their worship. Chapter 6. You protected the vision God gave you. Chosen one. Heaven is proud of you because you did something many people don't. You protected the vision. You didn't let the dream die just because it was misunderstood. You didn't abandon the calling just because it wasn't clapped for. You nurtured what God whispered, even when no one else heard it. You could have dismissed it. You could have treated it casually. You could have chased someone else's path because it looked easier or more accepted. But you didn't. You chose to walk the narrow road. You chose to build what no one else believed in. You carried the vision in silence. You watered it with tears. You prayed over it when it looked invisible. That's what makes you different. Not everyone saw what God showed you. Not everyone had access to the blueprint. But you didn't wait for others to approve it. You protected it. You didn't let discouragement poison it. You didn't allow delay to destroy it. You didn't allow doubt to take the wheel. You shielded it. Like Mary treasured the promise in her heart, you carried your assignment with reverence. And heaven noticed. There were moments you attempted to explain it to people, to make them understand why you chose the path you're on. But the Holy Spirit kept telling you, stay hidden. Protect this. So you stopped oversharing. You got quieter. You pulled away from noise. And instead of defending your vision, you developed it. You got on your knees and prayed over it. You went back to the altar and asked God to strengthen it. And that's when it started growing. You may not have seen fast fruit, but you trusted the root. You understood that God is not in a rush. He's into refining. You knew that what He placed inside you was sacred, and sacred things must be protected before they're presented. And so you waited, even when it hurt. You labored, even when it didn't look like it was working. You obeyed the vision, even when there was no applause. And now, chosen one, the heavens are responding. Because you honored the vision, heaven is now accelerating the vision. Because you didn't abort the process, God is now unlocking the promise. Because you valued what He gave you, the divine realm is now adding value to everything you touch. You're being trusted with more because you were faithful with little. You're being given platforms because you proved you could handle pressure without losing focus. People may not know what you went through to keep this vision alive. They don't know the battles you fought in silence. They don't know how many nights you cried asking God, "Did I hear you right?" But He saw, He heard, and He's rewarding you, not for being perfect, but for being protective of what He gave you. You didn't turn the vision into a business just to be popular. You didn't water down the message just to be liked. You didn't chase followers, you chased faithfulness. And because of that, God is about to show the world what happens when someone refuses to give up on what He planted. This is your watering season. Doors are opening that you didn't knock on. Favor is finding you in places you were never invited into. Connections are being made on your behalf. Chapter 7. Your character matches your calling. Chosen one, this is what separates you. Not just your gifts, not just your insight, not just your spiritual sensitivity. It's your character. And heaven has taken notice. Many are called, but few are prepared. Many can prophesy, but few can stay pure. Many can speak well, but few can be silent when God tells them to. But you let God dig deep. You let Him break what needed to be broken. You let Him touch the parts of your life no one else sees. You allowed the private purging before the public promotion. You let God develop the roots before you asked for the fruit. While others wanted platforms, you asked for purity. While others were chasing recognition, you were chasing righteousness. While some were focused on image, you focused on integrity. And that's why the heavens are proud of you. You didn't skip the process. You endured it. You allowed the wilderness to shape you, not harden you. You allowed correction to mature you, not offend you. When God exposed the pride in your heart, you didn't defend it, you repented. When He revealed the fear in your mind, you didn't hide, you surrendered. That's what makes you ready. Because gifting can open doors, but character keeps them open. And you've proven that you're not just ready to be seen. You're ready to be trusted. You let God build you in silence. You said no to shortcuts. You stayed hidden when it would have been easier to self-promote. You turned down opportunities that didn't align with your assignment. And when it felt like everyone was being elevated before you, you kept your heart clean. You didn't envy. You didn't complain. You stayed grateful. You stayed honorable. Heaven is proud because your private life reflects what you preach. Your integrity behind closed doors is stronger than the image you show in public. You're not just gifted, you're grounded. You're not just anointed, you're accountable. You're not just rising, you're rooted. And that makes you rare, because in a world chasing visibility, you chose virtue. In a time where everyone wants to go viral, you chose to go deeper. In a season where compromise is common, you chose to stay consecrated. That's why God is not just building a moment with you, He's building a movement through you. This movement isn't about hype, it's about holiness. It's not about ego, it's about eternity. And that movement is rooted in character humility, and obedience. You passed tests in secret. You resisted temptations that would have derailed your destiny. You let go of people, habits, and patterns that didn't reflect where God was taking you. And now, the heavens are moving. You're about to step into a season where what was hidden will be honored, not because you shouted, not because you demanded it, but because your life earned it. Your walk proved it. Your humility made room for it.